Good morning, it's the 13th of November 2025. You're very welcome back from rural Ireland. It's warm, not cold at all, probably about 12 degrees centigrade. You'd need some heating indoors if you're relaxing, but outdoors it's good, and it's starting to rain a little bit of rain. We've had a lot of rain in Ireland, which is very common for this time of year, and hence I have my cape on here to keep the drops off me till I get this video made, and my woolly cap. Now, I want to talk to you about media, news and propaganda and give you some inklings of how to approach it. The first thing you have is news. Good, reliable news. So if you go into town today and you meet a person you know for the last few years, could be the shopkeeper, could be somebody, any news you might say, and they'll say to you, well, actually, Rose, what do you call her? I better be careful. Thompson died suddenly. And you'll say, oh, did she? God. You'll get a shock. Now, that's almost certainly true news. True news. Rose Thompson's dead. He wouldn't have any reason to tell you, and it's verifiable. We have a website in Ireland called rip.ie, and if somebody appears there, it's usually the truth. If somebody's there as having died, it's usually the truth. It nearly always is the truth because it's checked with the undertakers. Somebody has to put him down or her down, do you understand? So that's another example of real news. However, if somebody doesn't appear on rip.ie, restinpeace.ie, that doesn't mean they haven't died, and there are a small number of people who do not want their names on rip.ie. I've known people who I lived beside, died and were buried and wasn't on it, and they were, I'd have went to the funeral. So some people don't want you going to funerals, they want to put you out, and so it doesn't mean that it's not on it. But if it is on it, it's generally very reliable news. I saw a film one time. It was something to do with gangsters in America, and they had this person was meeting another bit of a semi-gangster who was well in with the gangster world, and they had a special edition of the paper printed with news in it, and it was left. He was in first, and he was waiting on the other person to come, and the paper was left on the table, and he picked it up to look at it, and when he opened the middle page, the second page, he saw something which was untrue. It was to cause him to act in a certain way. So that's an idea of genuine fake news, and in espionage and all that sort of stuff and intelligence, it's done quite often. There's also reverse psychology, where you tell a person something to make them behave in a certain way. But we leave that out. So the first thing, or we'll leave that behind us and go on to real news. When you turn on BBC, RTE, GB News, Shannonside Northern Sound, LMFM, and they give out the death notices, well, then you can be sure whoever's on it is dead. Okay. If they say there has been a plane crash in France, unfortunately, touch wood, I hope it's not, and 22 people have been killed in Lyon or wherever, and that's almost certainly true. Almost certainly true. So you know that type of news. The next thing you have is a thing called infomercial. And this is where the radio or the television or somebody with a media presence goes to, let's say, a company or a new charity and gives it publicity, usually free. So I'm opening a factory here, and I'm going to make chocolate from cocoa grown in my greenhouse, which is virtually impossible, and market it in Ireland, and they come down and I do all the glowing stuff. Well, the fact that I'm opening a place to make this and market it and sell it in a local store is probably true. That bit of it is true. What's not true is that there's something unique about it or that it's going to do well. In covering my venture, they're actually promoting my venture, but it's quite temporarily. If I want to get more coverage, I have to pay for advertising. So you understand about infocommercialism. That's where I remember one time there was a lady looking for a job, and I saw that the Irish horseware factory in Kingsroad were doing well. They were doing really well, and I told her apply, and she wrote in to apply, and she got a letter back to say they're closing down. So very often companies will put out false reports about how they're doing to get someone to invest in it or get someone to think it's good or it's not as bad as it is. So that's infocommercialism, and you have to identify it. And this is the excuse they use in the case of things that I oppose, like the wind energy. They come out and give a big glowing report, and they say this wind farm will power 760 billion homes. If only we had extra cabling, we could keep France and Britain going, all from Ballydehob. Right, which is a direct lie. But they get away with it by saying it's infomercialism, that it's in the same category as going down to the fella with the Irish coffee shop. Or supposing if another lad starts up a company making animal care products or pet products, and he has special beds with covers on them for dogs and cats and special dietary things and all of this stuff, all very good, but nothing new about it, nothing new at all, and they give him a bit of coverage and people go into his shop and they shop around. That's kind of permissible. It isn't really foodie, yes. It's giving them a bit of a drive on, and it covers a bit of filler for them, gives them something to talk about on the telly and the radio. So that's infocommercialism, and then we move it on to where they actually push something which is a whole product, where you need to bring the public on board. Now, the noise is so loud here, from an airplane passing overhead, it really is roaring. It really is roaring that I really have to kind of shout. I've paused there for a minute. And by the way, the International Energy Agency has said that the use of fossil fuel has risen 40% since 2000. Can you hear me? And that it's going to rise from another 40% to 2050. So all the net zero stuff, where is that going to go? Moreover, the Liberal Party in Britain has agreed net zero is not going to go ahead. They can't back it. So all of this stuff is all an idea of sort of info-commercialism. But I just move now, it's gone over now to the next thing is where they plug a particular policy, usually by the government. In Soviet Russia, in North Korea, in Cuba, you will not publish anything which the government does not approve of. If you do, they'll come knocking on your door and you'll find yourself in the gulag. So that's direct dictatorship. Henry VIII had a similar setup. Now, democracies generally will not succeed, or many countries won't succeed, if they permanently deny people the right to free speech. It's sort of the breathing air of democracy. But they're coming around to doing that. So now I've explained to you genuine news, info commercialism, and then there's advertising. Advertising is permissible for financial reasons. So you're sitting back and you're watching the news and you hear about all the great things that's going on, and a new road opens somewhere and a new extension of Dublin Airport is in for planning or whatever else. And sometimes they'll say something which is only in the planning stage actually happened. So you need to read carefully. Are they saying that this is built or it's going to be built? There's a big difference. One is wishful thinking and the other is reality. So you need to get that they can't fool you on that, and they do that all the time. So with advertising, you're watching the news, you're looking at what's going on, and next thing there's a break, and it comes on, I wouldn't swap my Daz. Oh, Daz is a blue-white. It's a blue-white. Whoever would want to wear a blue vest? Blue-white. Well, they associate white, that there's a form of white which is extremely blue. Well, you see, there's three colours in the rainbow. And the rainbow comprises a lot of colours. So anyway, we'll not go in there. But anyway, that's advertising, and it's perfectly understandable. They pay to put that out to you, and YouTube has the same. You can get advertising free. YouTube. I know a person has it as a gift, but you have to pay for it, or you look at the ads and you can watch nothing. The minute it gets to the juicy bit, it cuts to an ad, and they're trying to sell you nappies for the baby, and you might have no baby. They're trying to sell you hearing aids, and you might need hearing aids. They're trying to sell you anything, except they won't try to sell you sporting firearm. They won't try to sell you a shotgun or a rifle, because they don't agree with that. They won't try to sell you cigarettes, because they're banned advertising. And so there's all this sort of stuff. Generally speaking, alcohol products a bit the same. Maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. It probably is permissible not to advertise alcohol. Maybe it is. I'm not too. I wouldn't be too worried about it. But anyway, so to understand advertising, so then you have a paling or a mixing or a merging of advertising and commercial info, and that's what happens with the solar farms, with the net zero, with they create the scare about the climate, and then they create the solution, the wind farms, and they talk about it. And it's not only that, they push the electric cars, and so that's mixing advertising with news, and you have to identify that. Now, the more they do that, the weaker they make their membership. In other words, their viewership and their listenership decreases. Now, in the case of RTE, they've been doing that for years, and I do hit back at them a bit, but they can't be caught in their own people, because I've made several complaints, and what they do is they put dopey people in charge of monitoring them. So if you make a complaint, it'll be some newly arrived person from South Africa who can't speak English that'll be judging it, and she'll have a checklist, and you haven't got a hope. The only controller, the only auditing or the only complaints procedure that I ever found worked in Ireland is the Incorporated Law Society, to be fair of them. And the reason they work is that they are the insurer for the legal profession. So all the solicitors and barristers pays into their fund, and if they're caught off for malpractice or doing something wrong, and there's a £50,000 claim made, that will be debited to or charged up to the Incorporated Law Society. The result is it's in their economic interest to make sure lawyers do the thing right. So that's the exception. I've been there, done that. Other people may have different views. So now you get the idea of this. Now, with BBC, they were completely woke, as you know, completely left. We had a left-wing government, mad woke. If they wanted a war, they want Americans with big tough soldiers, big tough General Schwarzkopf in charge, but they want to be the second in command, and they want all their officers to be LGBTQ. They want 1/4 of all their captains and all generals all to be women. The same as the Gardaí have a thing that 1/4 of all the members should be women. That's all very fine. That's a different thing to a war, and there's always a bit of backup and that. But they want all the high-ranking officers to be women, 25%, and then they want another 25% to be LGBTQ. And that means that the ordinary heterosexual man can get into the army. He can fight in the muck. He can do all these things, but he can't get promoted. He can't get promoted. And I know from the Garda Síochána, my mindset, my way of doing things is not allowed for promotion. You're excluded. That's all right. I don't have a problem with it, but that's the way it is. So it's a factor in whether you should join the Garda Síochána. Now, so we go on back to the military. They want this type of idealistic, woke military. And Putin and the Chinese are laughing at them. And Putin goes to town, he invades Ukraine because he knows they're useless. And the only wee danger he has is that America would join in the battle. And if America joined in, he would have a headache. There's no doubt about that. But America might lose, and America is not prepared to take that risk. It's prepared to let Ukraine go rather than risk a war with Russia. And I think once Ukraine is sort of dealt with, I don't think there will be any more wars. But we just happen to have President Trump, and he doesn't care about Europe. He hates the woke crowd, and he wants them all to be in the war. He wants Ursula von der Leyen out herself with her big rifle plugging through the muck. He wants to see the LGBTQ community, officers, captains, all in the muck, trundling through it, and no burgers, no mobile phones or anything else. But of course, for the ordinary Joe soap, the British government, the Irish government, and all the European governments, they'll want the ordinary membership, the ordinary men who are hold the post and take the flak and have to be attacked by drones. They want them out on the battlefield, whereas the LBGPQ officer corps will be up in an office, well and truly safe. And there's nothing new about that. Nothing new about that. There was slight exceptions during the Second World War with Montgomery and them. So that's what they want. So this is plugged in the media. Now, in the other type then of news is where they apply normality to something. So they start off now with an object that in 8 years' time, something that is not normal now will appear to be normal. So, for example, if they decided they were going to force everybody to walk backwards, everywhere they're going, we have to walk backwards, they'd start now, they'd condition us to it, and then they'd get that when they get to the 8 years, hopefully they'd try and bring in a law that you have to walk backwards. The other thing you see being plugged, and I'm an Irish nationalist to an extent, is the United Ireland has been plugged now, been plugged big time. And that's in the hope that they'll condition everybody to it, and they'll condition the unionists in the north to it. And funny enough, about 28% of unionists in the north are extreme left-wing. They believe in the Labour Party, they believe in woke, they believe in all this LBGPQ, climate change. The wits are scared out of them. They wet themselves over climate change. Unionists. So they have identified them and they've targeted them, but the mainstream unionists basically are conservatives, and they'll probably change over to Nigel Farage in the new thing. A new poll, that's the cat, a new poll has shown that Farage's Reform UK is now on 34%. But funny enough, the Greens are on 12%. Imagine the Greens. And Conservative and Labour are just marginally ahead of Reform UK combined. So that's an interesting point. So that's how news works. They condition the population to believe something which is abnormal is now normal. And then, of course, when anyone says it's not normal, they apply the title, you're a denier, you're a climate denier, you're a COVID denier. And I am labelled a denier. So that's the final straw. You're a denier. Now, what happened with Trump was they found this fella coming in, which was a complete upset of their whole apple cart, a complete upset, and they said it doesn't matter how you beat him. You beat him, you kill him. When there was a shot fired, there was deep regret that he wasn't killed. When he was attacked in Florida, deep regret that he wasn't killed. And so they want to charge him with crimes, they want to do everything. And when all that failed, they tried to do the January 6th crowd, and they doctored the video and said that he wanted to fight down on the Capitol Hill, when in fact all he said he was going to support the senators and congressmen. Do you understand? So they pinned them two together. So what happened there was they got enough rope. There was a period when they were at this, and I said it's a cod. Everyone said, no, that's not true, that's not true. But there wasn't enough of us. They had fooled the Irish people and most of the British people into believing this was true in other ways. And then they gilded the lily by telling the direct lie, and now they're facing a €1 billion claim, and they're not one bit sorry. There's a fella there by the name of Kevin Maguire, if you can dig him up. He sees nothing wrong with it at all. He says the Panorama programme was an hour long and there was one bit of it spliced. No harm at all. No harm at all. So if he turned around and said that I'm a paedophile, and that's only a small part of it, that Val Martin's a paedophile, he said that about me, that's only that width of it. Yet the programme is a mile long. So the programme's an hour, and there's a 20-second piece where he makes that false allegation. And if nobody spots it, that goes out. And he's saying that doesn't matter. I mean, the rest of it was true. See, this is how they work. And he's a fella to watch for, Kevin Maguire. I say with a name like that, he's Irish. So, in case anyone will post this, that I said I'm a paedophile, or if Val Martin's a paedophile, I want to repudiate that. That's not true. I tell it for the example. But nowadays, they could splice that in somewhere and say that he admits it. You know, that's the insidious nature of them. Now, the thing is, anyway, so we have that. Now they're caught. They have no regret. They're going to keep doing it. And indeed, if the government, which they won't do, puts in a conservative person, a good person to watch over this and fact check what they're putting in and change them from left-wing loonies to something moderate, they'll kill that person. They'll get them down in the canteen some nice evening, and the next thing the bread knife will be, and there'll be no cameras or nothing. And that's how vicious these people are. They'll kill you. They will kill you for this. They love this stuff, and they love the migration. They love the idea of Muslims taking charge. They hate Britain. BBC hates Britain with a vengeance. How are you going to change that? I see there that the website where you can cancel your license fee crashed yesterday with the sheer weight of numbers. Now, I'm not sure how it works in Britain, but as I understand it, they have a van going round and it's a fake. It doesn't work at all. That they can't do what they're saying. But if you're looking at a device which is plugged in to an aerial, like a television, you have to have a license. That's my view. If there's anyone here from Britain, would they explain it? In Ireland, if you have a receiver, a television set, you have to have a license. Doesn't matter if it's only out in the shed and it's broke. In Britain, it's a bit more, you have to be watching it on a device plugged into an aerial or whatever. Now, they have exempted the mobile phones and the smartphones. If they're plugged into any device, even the current, the power, you should have a license. If it's plugged into the electrical current or into some type of an aerial, you should have a license. But if it's not plugged in and you charge it up and then watch it, you don't need a license. And the reason is, if they started jailing every smartphone user, the jails couldn't hold them. So it's very difficult. I often tell the piece of one time in a particular town where the sergeant himself gathered up something like 11 people to go to prison for not paying their TV licence, and they all assembled out, and there was a bus hired, and off they went up to Mountjoy, and they arrived at 3:10. They were given a meal, they were documented in, and they were discharged that night at 11 o'clock before the last bus left for home. When I went up to town the following day, I met some of them on the street. They were laughing at the good of it. Not a hope. So that's the story. So I've explained the various types of news to you. How fake news can be direct lies. It can be by not telling the full story. It can be commercial, info-commercial, which is a sort of an advertisement done officially, where the program or prime time or something, or some type of a feature, ear to the ground, goes out and looks at a farmer, and he has some new tagging system or some new thing to detect heat in cows, and he gets a bit of a plug. That's all right. You know what they're doing. He's a one-off, and he's only doing it for once, and they'll be hoping eventually he'll come back in and advertise a bit more with them. Not a big deal. That's info-commercialism. That's different than to real news, where they don't do that. And then there's advertising, where it's done, you have to pay for it, and you know it's an advertisement. And some programs actually show you it's an advertisement. Okay, so then there's conditioning, where they slowly condition you into the climate baloney, or they slowly condition you into to believing that something which is not normal is normal. And the climate is a very good example, and you have the COP summit, and you have the Paris climate change, and they'll never tell you that none of the cures have been assessed under the law, under the SCA directive. So they won't tell you that. So they manipulate it, and it's very important to identify these things. Now then we move to social media and clickbait. I mean, social media is a great source of information. There are some people on there who may be a bit woke or conservative, but they're telling the truth as best as they can. One of them is Colonel Douglas McGregor on the Ukraine and the economy. No reason to tell lies. He mightn't always be right, but he does his best. I'm another example to do my best to tell it fairly true, so you know what you're getting. And for that reason, I don't always publish stuff, because I'm not sure. The other thing is Jeffrey Sachs, quite a good man, quite left wing, but still good. There's a Richard Wolff, an American professor, quite good. There's a Martin Armstrong there. All those are really quite good. They have a reputation to lose. There's 2CTV does the best he can. And there's a fellow called Heaver on the economy does the best he can, although he seems to permanently predict a downturn or a disaster. And that's one thing you got to watch. You have to be sure you don't continually say the economy is going to crash every day for 5 years. People begin to say, we're getting sick of you. It hasn't crashed yet. That's how you must look at all these things. Then there are other what do you call them, YouTube channels which are there to debunk Trump, to do down Trump, to make little of him. They're there to prove that climate change is the big thing. They'll be talking to you about the economy and then they'll say, oh, by the way, they've done nothing about climate change. Well, they're climate changers. And so you have to take that into account. And then there's some things to come on with some marvellous thing. Oh, they've discovered something on Mars. They've discovered a statue which couldn't be there normally on Mars. And of course, that's what they call clickbait. That's to get you in, get you looking at it, and then go over to an advertisement and start advertising some type of sugar-free thing for coffee. Some new coffee, some new thing they have, some new boots, and a big thing which is fake is ways of heating rooms twice as efficient. So they're saying now they have a new ceramic heater, which is baloney. You can't actually heat a room any more than the wattage that goes into it, no matter what system you use. But they tell you this is mad, this is a limited offer, sign up now and buy it. That's all false, and YouTube should not allow it. Now, I don't know what the complaint system is for YouTube, but that's clickbait. You're brought in there to get you looking around and then to try and sell you something. And if you go to Venice in Italy and they get you, you're looking around, some lad will arrive up, can we show you something? We'll bring you on a boat. And they'll bring you on a boat out to an island and show them cutting glass and making glass. But if you don't buy for €200, they'll not bring you back. Or if they do, you mightn't actually get back. So you got to identify, why is he inviting you out to the glass factory? It's to buy stuff. So you got to identify that the hunger on people is unbelievable. Now, going back to the BBC, it's not only with Trump. There's another one. They did a big program on Gaza, and they treated Hamas as if they're the lawful government, and they interviewed Hamas activists, and they were treated as if they knew everything. They were the lawful law in the land, and they were the only opinion that counted. And as we know, there's another side to that story. But the thing is, when journalists are behind lines, whether it's the US Army, the British Army, Joseph McCabe from Carrickmacross wrote a book, Rebels to Reels, about a man that was a journalist with the American Army. It's a very good read. Rebels to Read to Reels by Joseph McCabe. It's about a man from Carrickmacross who was a journalist with the American Army, but very good to read. But anyway, the thing about it is that when you're dealing with a military force, and you're in there with a military force, they will not let you publish anything until they vet it. And the reason is, number one, they're afraid you give away secrets for the enemy. So they'll make sure there's nothing there that they don't want to know. There was one example where some lad on a battleship, said, I counted the number of planes going off this morning, and I counted the number coming back, and the two were the same, but he couldn't say where they were going or anything like that. So that's quite normal. Now, there's nothing wrong with the BBC going in and getting Hamas to let them see around. That's legitimate, because the only way they can get that footage is by going to Hamas in the tunnels in Gaza. But they're bound to say at the beginning how this was filmed, and that the film was approved by the Hamas people. That's all. Let you know that that's the case, and most of them do it. But the BBC failed to do that. They made it believe that this was officially free, true news from Gaza, when in fact it was all passed and filmed under the supervision of Hamas. Not a problem, provided you notify your viewers that this is the case. They didn't do it. So that'll tell you they're mad Hamas, they're mad woke, they're mad anti-Trump, and they really are the woke left in a big way. Have I explained that to you? It's important to identify what you're seeing. What you've been watching BBC up to now is a type of propaganda. propaganda is I didn't deal with it because it mixes. They don't just give you raw propaganda; they give you a sort of a mix of it. So propaganda is where they just tell you lies and you take it or leave it, and you kind of know it's wrong. So the BBC has been nearly completely propaganda, and RT is propaganda in certain ways, and Shannonside Northern Sound the same. And it's quite clear with Shannonside Northern Sound, I have a view which is a very, very popular view and very real and provable. And they bring on this fella, what do you call him? Jim Gibbons, but nobody's allowed to counter him. So once you see that and you hear that with Joe Finnegan, you realise you're dealing with a type of fake news, a type of promotion of some type of a policy by free advertising and to build it into the brains of the people. Now, the British people now realise, a lot of them, that the BBC is not quite what it seemed, but there'll still be 40-50% will think, oh, it's great, and they were right to try and do Trump. And there's no such thing as a lie about Trump. He's never right. Well, then they have to answer the question, what about Gaza? What about Gaza? Okay. What about Gaza? So there you are. It's the same as I posted here about the Tune Baby homes. And somebody there, and I might bring it up again, said, you want to get your facts right. Well, I've just looked at Wikipedia. It was the Bond Secure sisters that were running it. So explain to me why the Bond Secure sisters were doing what they were doing. I mean, that seems, they should have been reporting these deaths, that's the law. But there you are, I'm connecting with the Catholic Church because it is the Bond Secure sisters. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. So there you are, folks. Now, in 30 minutes, you realise how all this fake news is working, and you realise that in a war, the first victim is the truth, and where is the truth is the thing. All I can say is I do my very best to bring you the truth. Partly succeed. Good luck. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.